I'm going to start off with something a bit personal, something very personal actually, but it's something that at this stage of my life I cannot speak about. I mean, when Mrs. Wolfson actually asked me to speak many months ago, I had no idea that at the time of this year I would actually be just finishing my shloshim for my father. My father was nifter on Shavuos day, on the second day Shavuos, the 7th of Sivan, and we just got up from shloshim last week, and I wanted to, with your permission, to say a few words about my father, which is quite connected to the shir actually, because the one point that probably affected me most profoundly about my father was something connected to Pirkie Avos, which fits in nicely with the shir. And interesting enough, that the hashgacha pratis that my father was nifter on Shavuos, the day of the giving of the Torah, and the title of our shir is appreciating Torah, and of course that is tremendously connected to the giving of the Torah on Shavuos. So I'm going to read you a pasuk in Mishlei. The pasuk says like this. It says, Kol yemei ani, roim, all the days of the poor are miserable. V'toiv leiv, and the good heart, the good-hearted ones, mishte tamid. Mishte tamid, that means they're in a state, the toiv leiv, whoever these people are, these toiv leiv, mishte toiv. Their life is a continual state of a feast, a party, however you want to put it. So the question is, who are these people in the pasuk? Who's the ani? Who's this poor man? And who's the toiv leiv? And who's this good-hearted person? So normally we translate ani as a poor man, financially poor off. Now that can't be what the pasuk means, because the pasuk is speaking about two people who are obviously opposites, and the toiv leiv, the one who's good-hearted, has nothing to do with financial status. So who's this ani? Who's this ani in the pasuk that his life is miserable? So I was trying to think around, where do we see where else does the Torah give us a definition of an ani, of someone else who's poor, other than financially poor? So it struck me that there's one place in the Torah that we're told who is rich. And I'm sure maybe you came across this when you learned the fourth parak of Pirkie Avos. But in the fourth parak, the Mishnah tells us very clearly who's rich. Ezu Ashir, the one who's rich, Hasameach v'cholkei, the one who rejoices with his portion. That means to say someone who the gifts, all the gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has sent him, whether that's in his material life, whether that's in his intellectual capabilities, whether it's his family, whether it's in the town that he lives in, no matter every detail of his life, someone who rejoices in his chelek, and that has so many components, he's the rich one. And I actually spoke at the shloshim. Imagine a person were to win, I don't know, the Euro Millions. Yeah, he wins a huge amount of money, and he goes to pick up the money. Or he gets it sent into his account, and then he goes outside after the money's been transferred to his account, and he sees a parking ticket on his windshield. So normally he might be bothered by that, but after he's just had 10 million, 20 million pounds put in his bank account, the parking ticket is not going to bother him so much. So I think when the Mishnah says Ezu Asher, who is rich, someone who rejoices in everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him, takes true enjoyment from everything he has, so he's really rich. He, when all the small things that happen day to day that get us upset or irritated, but if you're totally rejoiced in what you have, those small things are like the parking ticket. They're the parking ticket. They don't really bother you. And so now that we know from the Mishnah in Pirkie Avos who is rich, now we go back into this Mishlei and work out who's the poor one. Who's this poor one whose life is miserable? So now the one who is poor is the one who does not rejoice with his lot. The one who's always looking at the part of his cup that's not half full, and the one who's always kvetching about everything that's wrong in his life. And the one who's not samech b'chelkai, and he finds everything wrong in his life. So he's the ani. He's the opposite of the asher. Kol yemei ani roim. His days are miserable. The toiv leiv mishta tomid. But someone who's toiv leiv, and now we know toiv leiv is that's samech b'chelkai. The one who has such appreciation and deep connection and love for everything he has in his life, and he thinks about it, and he's constantly being grateful for everything he has in his life. So, how beautiful is the pasuk? The pasuk says, "Mishta tamid." His life is a continual feast. You know, when you're at a feast, when you're at a banquet, yeah, you feel so, you feel so good. You feel so much here, so much food, so much people, so much. You just feel so full on everything. You have everything. So what a beautiful way to live life. And I think out of all the beautiful characteristics of my father, this is probably the take home that I'll never forget about him, is that he was unbelievable in this. He grew up in Montreal. He loved the town of Montreal. He would always praise the city of Montreal. We lived in one place when we were younger, and he would praise that place as the best place to bring up kids. Then we went and got older, and he was the best place because it was near the highway. Easy to get to work. Wherever we were, that was the best place to live. His kids, praising his kids, his daughter-in-laws, my father was very into artwork, and he would speak about how incredible it is to be able to appreciate and collect art. No matter what he did, he was fully engrossed and fully, he loved everything he did. And his life was a mishta tamid. He was always full of energy. He was always someone who radiated simcha. And because of that, he was connected to so many people. People just loved that energy of being around someone who was so happy all the time. And he was like that basically till the end. And I think it's a wonderful trait that unfortunately a lot of people are lacking these days. Something that we could all probably work on to work towards mastering. So I just wanted to start with that, as that's what's really been on my mind, as you can understand. And also one of the greatest things we can do for a loved one once they've passed is to do mitzvahs, learn Torah on their behalf, which is a very powerful way. Once a person leaves this world, so then he's limited in his any mitzvahs he's done in this world. So you get reward for the mitzvahs you've done in this world, but once you go to the next world, you don't have the free choice to do any more mitzvahs. But the one way that your soul still could be elevated is when people say Torah or to do mitzvahs on your behalf. And mitzvah this shir should be lishpasei in the sham of Nochem ben Ari Leib. Also the letters of neshama. The letters of neshama. If you re-scramble the letters of neshama, you actually get the word Mishnah. So a lot of people are very particular about learning Mishnayos during the Shiva, during the Shloshim, and throughout the first year of Avos. Mishnayos is a very powerful way of elevating the neshama of the one who passed. Okay, so we're going to move Pirkie Avos, and I'm sure, even though it wasn't my job to do the first parak, don't worry, Mrs. Wolfson, we're going to get to the sixth parak. But there's a couple of points on the introduction of Pirkie Avos that I want to add in. First of all, it's very interesting that the first Mishnah in Pirkie Avos, I don't know who spoke on the first parak, but the first Mishnah in Pirkie Avos goes through the whole Masorah. It starts off Pirkie Avos by saying Moshe kibel Torah Sinai. Moshe got the Torah from Har Sinai. he passed it on to Yeshua, and Yeshua to the Zkanim, and Zkanim to the Nevi'im, so on. And the Mishnah goes through the whole tradition of the passing on of the Torah. Now, nowhere else in the Torah do you see specifically this chain mentioned. Yeah, we have there's laws about marriage, there's laws about damages, in all the sections of the Mishnah. Nowhere else is there a mention of the unbroken chain of Torah. So what is it? Why is it that right before Pirkei Avos, the Tana was Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was very particular to put the Mesorah right before at the beginning of Pirkei Avos, and I think it's a very fundamental point when we approach learning Pirkei Avos, and I think this is the understanding, is that when it comes to the laws of, let's say, kashrus or damages, we can understand that this was given at Har Sinai, and these are the laws of Hashem, and they're passed on from one generation to generation. When it comes to Pirkei Avos, a person might make a fundamental error, because Pirkei Avos doesn't speak about laws, does it? Pirkei Avos speaks about hashkafas, how we're supposed to view the world. It speaks about midos, how we're supposed to behave. Now, a person could easily take that and say, oh, these are good pieces of advice, a little bit of wisdom, But I think Rabbi Yehuda Nasi is telling us something much different. Every aspect of Pirkei Avos, Moshe Kibel Torah Mesinai, Master Yeshua, is part of our Mesorah, just like the laws of how to build a mikvah, and just like the laws of what happens when my ox gores your ox are all Misinai. So too, all the hashkafas, all the way we're supposed to look at the world and the way we're supposed to behave, and our midas tovas are also Misinai. So I think it's a very fundamental point that we shouldn't approach Pirkei Avos in a way that is kind of like we're just learning these nice ethical insights. Rather, this is Torah. This is Torah as much as any part of Torah is Torah. The title of the shir we said was appreciating Torah, and in fact that's really the introduction to the sixth parak. The sixth parak is really all about Torah. Yeah, that's the common thread about all the. I'm not going to say Mishnayos, because I learned something new when I prepared this year. Actually, that actually Pirkei Avos, you're gonna have to redo your itinerary, Mrs. Wolfson, because Pirkei Avos is really only 5 chapters. Yeah, so how come I'm giving a shir tonight and it's the 6th chapter? Yeah, what's going on? Actually, the 6th chapter is actually not Mishnayos. What do I mean by that? So we know that there's 2 parts of Torah. There's Torah Shebiksav, the written Torah, and the Torah Shebal Peh, and the oral Torah. Now, the Torah Shebal Peh, part of the Torah Shebal Peh is Mishnayos. And the first 5 chapters of Pirkei Avos are Mishnayos. Now, when Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he was the one who compiled all the Mishnayos, all the teachings of the Tanaim, and he redacted and he formulated the body of the Mishnayos. So anything that was included was called Mishnayos. But there was also many other teachings. There's many other teachings of the Tanaim that were not included in the Mishnayos, and things that were not part of the official formulation. And one of those things that was left were called Brisas. Brisas are also teachings of Tanaim. It's also Torah. But for whatever reason, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi left some things out. In fact, the Mishnayos, is a bit shocking, are only about 5% of the teachings of the Tanaim. So the 6th parak of Pirkei Avos is actually Brisas. These are things that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi did not include in the Mishnayos. So now I'm sure you're all wondering. So why is it that we have in our Sidurim and our why we say that there's 6 prakim? How did this 6th parak get in here? So there's a very well spread minhag. There's a very common custom that between the weeks of Pesach and Shavuos, there's a minhag going back hundreds, maybe thousands of years already, to learn Pirkei Avos between Pesach and Shavuos during that time. Now, as we all know, there are there's 7 weeks, yeah, from Pesach to Shavuos, and there's 6 Shabbosim. There's 6 Shabbosim. So the first 5 weeks are the real Mishnayos, the Pirkie Avos. And in order to complete the 6th Shabbos, this brisa, all these brisas of the 6th parak were included. And now with that understanding, we can understand as well why the 6th parak is all about Torah. Because this parak is the parak that was always learned on the Shabbos immediately following Shavuos. So obviously, how appropriate it would be that on the last Shabbos before Shavuos, we spend time learning, appreciating Torah, appreciating the depth of Torah, appreciating the beauty of Torah, and that's why the 6th parak was added, as these brises were added. And while we're on the topic of appreciation, I recently told my students in class a phenomenal story that just came to my attention. Is there's a great Rav named Reb Chaim Kreisworth. Now, Reb Kreisworth, for those of you who do know him or who heard of him, he was the chief rabbi in Antwerp, in Belgium. Now, when he during World War II, he escaped Poland, and when he was escaping Poland, he met a Yid. And this Yid, whatever, was very worried that he was not going to make it. He was not going to make it out, and he gave Rav Kreisworth details of his Swiss bank account, and he said, I want you, I trust you, I want you after the war, if you make it out, I want you to search out my children, and I want you to get this money to my children in case I don't make it out. And in fact, this man did not make it out, and Rav Kreisworth did make it out, and eventually ended up in Antwerp. And he had this information, he kept this information with him, obviously didn't touch the money. And 20 years passed, and Rav Kreisworth, one day, someone was collecting tzedakah, a poor man was collecting tzedakah in his shul, and after Shachris, Rav Kreisworth went up to him to give him some money, and he started talking to him. And when this man said his name, Rav Kreisworth almost fainted. It was the same name of this person who gave him the details of the Swiss bank account. Now, Rav Kreisworth didn't jump to conclusions. He asked him many, many questions about his family, and it became clear that this was 100% one of the sons of this person. 20 years later, and Rav Kreisworth took out the details, and you can imagine the shock, absolute shock of this man who was walking around in rags for the last 20 years and going around shuls collecting money for his parnasa, was now told he was basically a millionaire. Now, what I love about this story is that this person was a millionaire really for 20 years, but he was walking around in rags. Why was he walking around in rags? Because he didn't know. He didn't know what he had in the bank. Yeah. So we could draw from that an unbelievable lesson, is that, we have so much in our lives. We have so much, to be Yidden, to be a nation, to have Torah mitzvahs, and so we have so much in our lives that we're all multi-billionaires. Yeah. But if we don't realize what we have, if we don't think about what we have, and we don't access it, then we're like that guy walking around in the rags, that his money is sitting there in Switzerland, he doesn't even know about it. So I think that's why we always have to, that's why the beauty of having a shiur, or taking time to appreciate the beauty of the depth of Torah, what we have is an absolutely essential thing. And it's not only Torah and mitzvahs, but everything we have. Like, going back to, I was speaking about my father, Rabbi Victor Miller in America was renowned. He was renowned for his appreciation of the world and of the world around him, and the fruits and vegetables and his body. I'm not gonna. I can speak on and on about him, but I want to just relate to you one line that he said on a tape. He had thousands of tapes. That for me it's a beautiful, beautiful line. And he said in his Brooklyn accent, he says, "Some people go to the movies." He says, "I open my window." And what was he saying by that? He was saying, like, if you just look outside, you look at the world, you look at people, you look at a child, you look at an animal, if a person thinks about what's around him and in a deep way and realize the beauty in creation. So who needs to go to the movies? Who needs to look for, outside entertainment? Everything's there for us. We just have to tap in to realize what we're surrounded with. Okay. So now I want to turn our attention now, finally, Mrs. Wolf, into the 6th parak, and I want to share with you a Mishnah. Now, the Mishnah, when we look at it at first glance, it actually seems like a very nice, superficial story, but in fact, like all of Torah, the more we delve into it, you see how much is actually hidden in there. In the Chazal, sometimes they compare Torah to a hammer banging on an anvil. When you take a hammer and you bang it on metal, so sparks come out, and you keep banging it, more and more sparks come out. And the same thing with Torah, that you can read it on one level, and if you keep banging away, you'll get more and more chidushim, more and more novelties will come out. So, but on the first glance, I'll read to you the 9th Mishnah in the 6th parak. Amar Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma. Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma said the following: Pam achas hayisti mahalech b'derech. One day, I was walking on the way. Upaga bi adam echad, and I bumped into someone. Someone greeted me. V'nasa li shalom, and he said shalom to me. V'hechzarti li shalom, and I returned shalom to him. Amar li, he said to me, Rabbi. He said, Rabbi, me'ezim makom ata. He said, what place? Where do you come from? Amarti lo, I said to him, Be'ir g'doila shel chachamim shel seifrim ani. I come from a big town. I come from a town full of Talmid Chachamim, full of people learning Torah. Amar li, he said to me, Rabbi, he said, Rabbi, do you want to come live with us? You want to come live with us in our town? I'm going to give you millions of gold coins, the avanim tovers, and precious stones, and maguliyas, and all kinds of gems. You come live with us in our town, you'll be an instant millionaire. Amarti lai, I said to him, kol kesef zav, even if you give me all the silver and all the gold, the avanim tovers, and all the precious stones, and all the precious gems in the entire world, eini dar ele b'makom Torah. I'm only going to live in a place of Torah. In other words, he said no. He turned down his offer. V'chein kosev, it says in Sefer Tehillim, al yidei David HaMelech, as David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Toivli Torah's picha ma'alfei din rezav. Your Torah to me is better than gold, any gold and silver. Not only that, when a person leaves this world, when you leave this world, you don't take any gold with you, you don't take any silver with you, you don't take any precious stones with you, you don't take any gems with you. The only thing that you take with you when you leave this world is your Torah and your Maisim Tovim. Any good deeds, any mitzvahs that you did in this world, that's the only thing that comes to you. And I actually, on this point, when I was home, I was back home sitting shiva with my mother, and my father collected art, and I was walking around the apartment, and this idea, like we hear it so much, but when you see it with your eyes, it just it just goes into in a whole different level. Like, one day to the next, all those suits hanging up in his cupboard, and his art hanging on his wall, and his car and his parked car, and it's all just sitting here, and he's moved on. You don't take anything with you. Yeah. So the Mishnah finishes off and tells you that the words of Torah and the mitzvahs will accompany you. They're going to accompany you in this world to protect you. They're going to go with you to the grave, and they're going to go with you to Olam Haba. So that's the story. That's the story on a very surface level. That the Rabbi Yossi bumped into this man. He offered him a bomb to come to his town. He refused to him, and he said, no, I'm not coming for any money. Now, one of the first questions that comes to mind when we read some beautiful Perushim on this Mishnah. I don't know if there's a set of Pirkie Avos called Ethics from Sinai of Irvin Bunim, who are unbelievable set, which I used in preparation for this year. And also the Abarbanel has a lot to say on this Mishnah. So I want to share with you a little bit of what I saw from them. Now, first of all, how did he turned down the offer? In the Mishnah, he turned down the offer. Now, how was he so sure? Yeah, he said, I'm not coming to your town. I'm only living in a place of Torah. Now, how did Rabbi Yossi know that this man did not live in a place of Torah? They'd never met before. It was a random occurrence. So how did he know what was going on in this person's town? So you can point out a few things. First of all, what was he offering him? He was offering him a tremendous amount of money to come to his town. Now, the rule is, when you're willing to pay for a lot of money for something, that usually is a sign that there's a scarcity. Yeah. In wartime, food is much more precious and more expensive. So if he was offering a lot of money, that means Torah was not in plenty there. Second of all, he was very quick to offer it. Yeah, he was very anxious to offer this money. He didn't hesitate. And another thing, which is very interesting, if you look carefully, what did he say? He said, I will give you. He said, I will give you the money. Now, if you had a town of people who appreciated Torah, who valued Torah, certainly the whole community would want to join in and to invest and to have this person come to their town. If this person was offering it on his own back, it must be that he was an individual in that town. So you see, Rabbi Yossi picked up on subtleties, and he knew straight off that this place was not the place that he wanted to be. Now, but another question that may be ringing in some of your heads now is that, well, why did he turn the offer down? Maybe he could have gone there and affected people. We see nowadays we have Jewish people around the world in all kinds of interesting places, teaching people Torah in even very remote places. So why was he so quick to refuse the offer? So also you could, if you listen carefully to the conversation they had in this Mishnah, he just said to him, why don't you come and live in our town? He didn't say anything about building shuls or building schools or building places of base of medrash for Torah. He just said, you come and live by us. Yeah. A wealthy man could see a beautiful piece of architecture in one country, and he can have his workmen, rebuild it or transfer it into his country. But Torah is not like that. We don't just, you can't just transplant Torah. Torah has to be built with achdus, with the hearts of everyone involved in it. So Rabbi Yossi felt that this wasn't his calling, and this is not the place where Torah would flourish. Now, there's one beautiful call it a diuk. There's one word in this Mishnah that I'd like to just focus on. When he said to him, Amalei, Rabbi, he said to him, would you like to live in our place? Yeah, bim koimenu can mean our place. Now, bim koimenu means our place, but it could also mean bim koimenu could also be in place of us. In place of us. So what was he saying here? There's an unbelievable thing here. What do you mean bim koimenu, in place of us? Some people, unfortunately, you see this, that some people don't realize that Yiddishkeit and Torah is something that we are meant to connect to in ourselves. And that means to say, Torah is not a spectator sport. Torah is not a spectator sport. It's not something that we sit back and someone else do for us. When he said bim koimenu, he heard bim koimenu. Will you come and like, as if be the Rav instead of us? Yeah, bim koimenu. When we read the Shema, we say the whole Shema in the second paragraph is all written in the second person. Yeah, it's all written in the second person. We have to be active participants in our Yiddishkeit. A Rav can teach, can inspire, but in the end of the day, we have to change ourselves. I know when I was in yeshiva, in my early days in yeshiva, my Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Rosenberg, Zichron Levacha, used to learn with a lot of Bali Tshuva. And he had a very strong character, and one thing that he was particular on, he would learn with Bali Tshuva, but if, let's say, after X, I can't remember how long, but he after a certain amount of time, if they didn't commit to something, they would learn, and if after, let's say, 2 months, 3 months of learning, they wouldn't commit to something, not maybe everything, but if they wouldn't commit to something, putting on tefillin and saying brachas, then he would stop learning with them. Because Yiddishkeit is not a spectator sport. Yeah, something that we have to be actively involved with, connect our whole beings to. We see many stories in Chumash and in the Gemara about great people who got actively involved in mitzvahs, Amoraim, great Amoraim people, Chachamim in the Gemara who prepared for Shabbos, who actively got prepared. They did it themselves, even though they may have had many people who could have prepared their Shabbos for them, but they wanted to do it. We see by Avram Avinu, by the Akedah, he got up early in the morning, he saddled his donkey, and this was to slaughter his son. He had many, he was a rich man, Avram Avinu. He could have had other people get his donkey ready for it, but he wanted to be actively involved. And I think this point is a very fundamental point that perhaps we can have a bit of feedback here, but before we do, I think we have to find ways in our Yiddishkeit to personally connect to our Yiddishkeit. I'll give you a small example. And actually, I think I got this suggestion from Rabbi Victor Miller, actually. He says, when a person says moedim, in the middle of Shemona Esrei, when a person is moedim, so you can say the words of moedim, you can think about the words, what he's saying, what he's thanking Hashem for. But if right before you bow at moedim, you think about something that you absolutely love in your life, something, whatever it could be a certain person in your life, some aspect of your life, and you think about that thing just before you say moedim. So your moedim is a whole different moedim, and your tefillah is a whole different tefillah, because now you've personally connected it to yourself. And if we could do that in all our aspects of Yiddishkeit, our Yiddishkeit would be so much more meaningful to us and so much more personal to who we are. I'll tell you, my brother is I'll give you an example of how we could do this in chesed, in kindness. My brother's a lawyer. He lives in New York. So he wanted to somehow contribute to the community. So what he does is he's on the board. He's the chairman of a organization called I can't remember the name of the organization actually, but it's basically what they do is they're all a bunch of lawyers who dedicate their time to fighting different states for foster children who the states are not supplying enough money for these foster kids. So these lawyers donate their time and they use their skills, they use their legal skills in order to fight for these children who are really should be better looked after. So for me, that's like such a wonderful way of using something in your own strengths and investing that into you serving Hashem. Or it could be, let's say, if you're learning Torah, it could be an aspect of halacha that for whatever reason you want to master that area of Torah. But if we can find ways, whether it's in our davening, whether it's in our chesed, to personally connect, it's a very, very. I wouldn't. If anyone wants to add at this point, I would love to hear if anyone has any suggestions or any maybe personal experience with this type of thing where they've personally connected, they've invested themselves in their Yiddishkeit in a personalized way. It would be I think it would benefit everyone if someone would share something. We'll give them a couple of minutes, Mr. Wilson, to see if anyone will be brave to share or to think actually, Oh, I see. We should have opened the chat, Mrs. Wilson. Anyone? No. Anyways, if you don't want to share something, but at least try to think of how ways you can do it. You can do it because sometimes we're doing Torah, we're involved in Torah mitzvahs all the time, and we get caught up often in day-to-day things. Sometimes we get caught up in the routine of day-to-day. But if you can find ways to personalize your Yiddishkeit, it could be let's say it doesn't have to be so complicated. It could be, let's say a person is particularly finds it easy to give compliments. Yeah, some people don't find it so easy, but some people find it easy. So recognize that in yourself and take upon yourself to use that on a daily basis. Like people could have strengths and they maybe even know they have the strengths, but they don't use them. Realize that we have strengths. Go make a point to say 3 compliments to someone every day if you find that easy. Or some people find it easy, doing chesed with their body, like whether it's helping, going out and helping special needs or whatever it is. Find ways in which we feel that we are personally good at and invested in our Yiddishkeit. And I think that really is an important point that comes from the word bim koimenu, that Rabbi Yossi in the story, he heard them saying, "Come to our town instead of us." Yeah, I don't usually take such public stands on certain things, but one thing, let's say, for example, like cantorial slichus. Yeah, it can be a beautiful thing to listen to music, but to go to a slichus, yeah, and to listen to someone else, to perform slichus, when I'm not actively involved in my slichus, that's like the opposite of what I feel like I'm talking about. Yeah, we shouldn't look for others to be doing our mitzvahs for us. Rather, we should be the opposite. We should be finding ways that making Torah mitzvahs very personal, very connected to us. Just going to finish off that the Ibn Ezra finishes off by saying on this Mishnah that you could learn that this story actually never happened. You could learn that this story never happened. So what was Rabbi Yossi telling us? Yeah, what does it mean? It says in the Mishnah, Amar Rabbi Yossi ben Kisma, Pam achas hayisi mahalik b'derech. I was going on my way. What's going on my way? So the Barbanel says, going on my way we're all going on a way. Everyone's on a journey. Everyone's traveling through life. Yeah, and this Rabbi Yossi says and as we go through our life, we're lots of different temptations come up, lots of in different ways and different forms. We're pulled away from our Yiddishkeit. We're tempted, and even on a daily basis, especially nowadays with all kinds of technology and other things that pull us away from focusing on what we're really supposed to be doing in the big picture. So when we go on our way, Rabbi Yossi was going on his way, and what happened? Someone offered him a lot of money. It could have been, we probably all at some point have these fantasies of having a lot more money than we have, and maybe it could be very tempting to go to a place when he's being offered a lot of money, even though necessarily wasn't spiritually going to be the best place for him, and that's the mashal here of all of us. In our daily lives, we go through different tests, that things come up, but we have to stay strong and keep our eye on the big picture like Rabbi Yossi did. And as he said at the end, that there's nothing that's more precious than him. And actually, he quoted David HaMelech. At the end of the Mishnah, he quotes David HaMelech, yeah? Now, he was the most perfect person to quote, because David HaMelech was the king. Yeah, he was the king. Now the king has access to all the resources. Yeah, the king is basically, in a sense, the richest person because he everything is his really, and he can access anything. And David HaMelech, who had access to everything, he's the one who said these words. He's the one who said, "Toivli Torah's picham alfei zav v'kesef," that your Torah is better to me than all the gold and silver. Now David HaMelech, it's very easy for someone who has no money or someone who doesn't have a way of earning money to say, the Torah is more precious to me than money. Well, you don't have any money, but someone who has all the money and he tastes it and he can realize and he can have access to that, but he still says that there's nothing better in the world than Torah and mitzvahs and connecting to Hashem. Then this is appropriate, no more appropriate person to quote for Rabbi Yossi to strengthen himself to stay on the Torah path. So I don't know how long people normally speak, but that's what I have to say tonight, Mrs. Wolfson. Okay. If anyone has any questions or anything, please go ahead.